Yeah. Hello. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the committee that invited me to come over here. And it's special to me because I like this city. I have so many beautiful memories of this city, so this moment is very important. And I hope that I could bring some good feelings to you as well. All right. So I'm going to talk firstly about Andean futurism. Andean futurism emerged after the publication of the Andean Futurist Manifesto that I have in here. Okay. In 2019. The result, this manifesto was a result of 8 years of research and creating futures through art in the Andean region. The manifesto proposed a methodology that combines Russian Cuban futurism from 1913, indigenous avant-garde from the southern Peru, and ethno-historical studies to reinterpret Andean cosmology through nonlinear narratives. Following the manifesto's publication, young artists from the Central Andes of Peru, specializing in experimental digital poetry, embraced Andean futurism, sparking a contemporary Andean art movement focused on creating futures through poetry, performance, video art, and objects. Additionally, they promote cooperation and reciprocity, such as the concept of AINI in both digital and physical communities. In the following essay, we will explore the work of these artists, investigating the relationships between time and pre-Columbian Andean objects. We believe that studying the transtemporality of Andean objects offers a different understanding of pre-Columbian Andean art and opens new possibilities for contemporary artist production. By examining the temporal nature of Andean artist objects, a vast field is open for reinterpreting and reinventing art in the current context. This project arises as a counterpoint to predominantly formalist analysis, like those of George Kubler and Joseph Albers, which focus solely on the form and material of Andean objects without considering their social use and their ability to activate forms of collective knowledge through art, textiles, and ceramics. Andean futurism bases its futuristic perspective on looking to the past to imagine futures, thus highlighting the importance of Andean culture tradition in artist creation. This research precisely focuses on the connection between tradition and artistic contemporary creation. I'm going to talk now about the temporal dimension of the Andean object. Here's the Manifesto Futurismo Andino. Okay, so I'm going to start with this. One could say that a distinctive feature of Martín Chambi's, he's a Peruvian photographer from Cusco, series of photographs at Machu Picchu, part of the Jan Mulder collection, is how his lens captures the architecture, establishing a dialogue with the landscape that seems to come alive. The Inca citadel is framed by three imposing mountains: Machu Picchu, Huayna Picchu, and Putucusi. The Incas, like the cultures that precede them, and contemporary ones as well, consider mountains as beings with their own life, capable of engaging in real dialogue. We call it apus. The animated, we prefer to say animated instead of animistic because we know that the tradition of animistic is related with this linear temporality that make us feel like we are, like underdevelopment cultures. You know what I mean? All right, so this animated view of the landscape is crucial for understanding the relationship between Andean cosmology, the object, and its temporal dimension, which we are engaged in deciphering. To understand the Andean approach to the object as a multitemporal entity, it is essential to examine the concept of kamak in their cosmology. I would say, like in Quechua, asen, hammock in their cosmology. This concept symbolizes the vital force that animates all things, indicating that objects possess an inherent energy similar to mountains. Gerald Taylor, famous historian, studied this concept and found that certain objects contain their own hammock, obtained from the artisan who creates them. According to Gerald Taylor, the terms hammock, and hamaska express a vital force that animates both the body, the consciousness, and the spirit. Okay? We're talking about an Andean concept called hammock. In this sense, for the historical anthropologist Steve Kosiba, kamai, that came from kamak, is an inherent potential in matter, often activated in relation to a person. Kosiba adds that in some cases, kamak can imply an intimate and embodied knowledge of matter, with the kamayok being the person capable of shaping matter and also having an obligation towards it. So we have the kamak and we have the hamayok, which is the one that brings kamak to things. This approach is relevant because it confronts us with the concept of an object that needs to be activated, and that this activation is given by a specialist, the hamayok, assumed to be the person or people who have the ability to bring an object to life, that is, imbue it with kamak and thus fulfill a role in the community. However, perhaps the scholar who has delved this most into this topic is the art historian Thomas Cummins. After his study of Keros, this is the idea of, the mountains are alive for us, You know what I mean? You feel it. Okay, this is an image from Guaman Poma in which is representing the Huacas as stones and the Incas talking with the stones. So they are live entities for us, still. So these are the Keros. After his study of the Keros, ceremonial vessels of great symbolic importance in the Inca period and closely linked to the concept of reciprocity, Cummins emphasized that the artisan working in the Inca state of Tahuantinsuyo, this is a quote of him, was called to perform a creative act, but within a different ontological context. Cummins wonders, for example, Wadi Quero, made around 700 CE, was an animated object in some manner equal to the Inca pear found at Ollantaytambo in Cusco, another region, for which ethnohistorical and contextual evidence exists. I have to tell you this, like for example, the quero, the creation of a quero is the idea they make it in pairs, okay? So for example, for some, how do you call these people? Collectors, the collectors say like, oh, I have the same one. It's fake. No, man. They make it two together. You know why? Because they put it like this. This perspective on approaching the object leads us to the question our current relationship with Andean pre-Columbian objects, considering them not merely as art objects that we can approach solely through their materiality and form, but as entities capable of engaging in dialogue with a space-time that can exist simultaneously in two places. Likewise, it suggests the ability of these objects to make the past coexist with the present. For Cummins, these objects were conceived as the materialization of the past in the present, and the proximity of their presence could generate linguistic changes that express the nature of memory. For Cummins, therefore, orality is the basis of the relationship between knowledge and memory in the Andes. From this perspective, futurists approach a way of understanding the temporality of space-time through the linguistic roots found in both the Quechua and Aymara languages, Andean languages dating back to pre-Hispanic times. For the Bolivian cultural researcher Fernando Montes Ruiz, in Andean cosmology, time follows, and this is important because it's related with what we're talking about, chronodissidence, this concept, but for Bolivian cultural researcher Fernando Montes Ruiz, in Andean cosmology, time follows a dynamic of complementary opposition. It is essential to highlight that the symbolic attributes of the present are symmetrically opposed to those of the past and the future. That is, the present represents an exact inversion of the past and the future, which in turn are identical to each other. Past events repeat in a cyclical time that always returns to a starting point. In Aymara and Quechua languages, the past is visualized forward, while the future is perceived backward. This is interesting, and I think it's... For example, in Quechua, the term ñaupa means ancient, also translate as forward, while jepa is used for after and behind. Similarly, in Aymara, kipuru means tomorrow. The word kipuro is composed of kipa, referred to behind the back, and uru, meaning day. Thus, the concept of tomorrow in Aymara will literally be the day behind. Unlike Spanish, where future days are referred to as from here forward, in Aymara, something similar is expressed as from here backward. I have it here. Got it? Therefore, it is important to point out at this point that Andean futurism examines the relationship with the future through the equidistant perception of the past in relation to the present. This implies a consideration of the unknown that, however, coexists simultaneously in various temporal moments. In this sense, from language is encoded the way in which the past is visualized in the present through the object. We refer here to objects that act as mediators of knowledge from the past, which manifest in the present when activated by individuals or a community. These objects not only imply the presence of a creator, but also represent an active connection with the past that continues to resonate in the present and the future simultaneously. That's why it's transtemporal. Got it? It is in this way that Andean futurism proposes the possibility of conceiving the creative work as a living object and offers Andean artists ontological alternatives from which it is possible to create works of art. I want to show this. So Andean futurism go to the past and then go to the future, in this cyclic perspective, and we got the reflection of the future in the present, or we can complete it and go to the present. Now I'm going to talk about the influences of Russian Cuban futurism and on Andean futurism, exploring the Mirkonsa concept. I'm going to go here, right? While this is a conference on Latin American art, it is necessary to assert that Andean futurism draws inspiration from the concept of Mirkonsa. And this is important because people say like, oh, but what do you call futurist? This is the reason we call futurist, but it's not related with the linear idea of futurism or the tradition of Italian futurism or some futurism that believe that in progress. The linear. They are linear. We're not. While this is, draws inspiration from the concept of Mirkonsa in Russian Cuban futurism. The artist movement developed in the years leading up, just before the Soviet Revolution, integrate visual arts, musicians, and poets who envision non-linear futures, but a cyclical one. The poet Alexei Krushenik stated, "We Cubo-futurists have learned to look at the world backward. We enjoy this reverse movement. Regarding words, we notice that can be read backward, and thus they acquire a deeper meaning." On the other hand, the poet and playwright Velimir Klevnikov was interested in studying the features and changing currents of time. He continues, analog soundings can be made in the flow of time, establishing the laws of past time and studying the channel of future time. Klevnikov sought to discover through these time features the very nature of time itself, thus being able to master it. This led him to develop a theory where he translates emotions occurring during the day into numerical equations. These equations allow him to predict events such as the year of the Soviet Revolution. He predicted using his own algorithm in 1913 that the Russian Revolution will happen in 1917. Okay. This term mirkonsa, which could be translated as upside downward, you know, it's more like more related like a world backwards. Propose organizing stories in a non-linear manner, leading to the creation of a transrational language. This technique discontextualized Orthodox Russian iconography and placed it in futurist space, as evidenced in Malevich's work. Kazimir Malevich was a Russian futurist in his early days, you know, and you can see how he used the cross from, you know, from Orthodox tradition, and he decontextualized the past and recontextualized it in another moment. Andean futurism adopts these concepts to reinterpret Andean cultural tradition, seeking to apply them in building a new creative horizon that connects the past with the future. This thus returning to the present, something like I show here, you know? Okay, I need a drink. It's just coffee, huh? So I'm going to talk now about the impacts of on recent Andean art related with Andean futurism. Since the publication of the Andean Futurist Manifesto, the ideas of the manifesto have taken shape thanks to the collaboration of contemporary Peruvian artists. The collective Los Demonios del Ande, you will see like people were starting talking about Andean futurism in Peru. We have like a lot of like events related with Andean futurism. You know, people is on Andean futurism right now in Peru. Los Demonios del Ande is a collective from Huancayo. It's based on the, okay, the collective is part of a broader community, Los Demonios del Ande, sorry, I lost it. The collective Los Demonios del Ande has created a bridge between Andean futurism and the tradition of the Huanca culture, originating from the Junín region in the central Andes. This collective is part of a broader community that includes the founding of Ciber Aini in Huancayo and the creation of the group Los Demonios del Ande. These artists see themselves as continuators of Andean futurism, merging the tradition of experimental indigenous poetry with an exploration of the digital temporal dimension. This approach falls within the hyper-poetry poetic movement, which spans in various regions of Peru. Los Demonios del Ande is based on the idea of community inspired by the concept of Aini, Andean concept of Aini, symbolizing the reciprocity and mutualism in Andean communities. Under this principle, communities maintain solidarity and collaboration as core values. The Ciber Aini in Huancayo, the Ciber Aini, has explored this concept involving actors, video artists, musicians, and programmers. For 4 years, this collective has produced and present poetic and visual material in both urban and rural independent spaces in the Junín department. They have also participated in art galleries and concerts in Lima, independent art galleries and venues in Lima, addressing social justice issues, such as criticizing racism and reclaiming cultural identity within the enduring colonial culture system in Peru. From its inception, the collective has had prominent members like El Pumita Andino Cazador. Pumita, un abrazo desde aquí donde estés. A performer and digital poet living in the rural community of Salcahuasi in Huancavelica. His work explores an Andean futurism that engage in a dialogue with Andean popular culture. For example, he imagines Andean futurist technologies that facilitate communication through the use of dreams by Andean communities, the dreams. His work, The Dreams of the Zaparas, incorporates El Sueño de los Zaparas, incorporates elements of self-generating artificial intelligence, sound spatialization, and performance. The proposal consists of creating a dream mediatek divided into two parts, exploring how dreams can envision better future societies and how the digitalization of dreams and past objects can materialize dreamlike intangible heritage through hybrids. This work, exhibited in performances in the Andean city of Huancayo and on the independent art scene in Lima, combines the past with the idea of community and positions indigenous ontologies in a hopeful future. This vision is reflected in performances that create an environment activated by sound, word, and images, thus establishing a dialogue between physical and immaterial space. On the other hand, we have the work of artist Cindy Ramirez. Her work is particularly special as it seeks to materialize the experience of multitemporal objects by connecting her with her family tradition in textiles. Although her approach to language shows skepticism towards written language, she suggests that Andean cosmology had other ways of reading through the materiality of the image, memory, and the activation of this matter. This is reflected in her work in the interaction with coca leaves, a sacred plant with ancestral knowledge, in which this work, the viewer becomes an active participant by manipulating and organizing the coca leaves to construct meanings. Furthermore, Peruvian artist Cindy Ramirez's work not only delves into the past, but also criticizes it, avoiding idealizations of the Andean past. Her work confronts the Inca Empire, a theocratic structure with little tolerance for diversity. Through textiles, she references the uncus used by Inca military, reinterpreting this design to place it in a future where machismo, violence, that is part of Andean tradition, still endures today. This approach not only constitutes a critique, but also an alternative way of thinking about the poetic act, transcending the object itself to explore the possibilities that arise from interacting with it. The connection with the object reveals a universe in constant evolution, turning the loom into a multitemporal artifact. In the audiovisual field, the work of video artist Jesus Mesa, an artist whose work is closely linked to Andean through the use of found footage of popular Andean singers of Huayno rhythm. His work Mesa employs the representative colors of the clothing and design unique to the Huanca culture, transforming them into a bright palette that appeals to Andean abstraction. In this way, he contributes to generating a synesthetic, or synesthetic, I don't know how to say it, a state rooted in Huanca tradition. His work not only vindicates popular culture, but also appropriates it to propose a new visuality. Mesa does not analyze Huanca identity from a distant position, but immerses himself in his cultural tradition, showing a constant concern for civil injustices. This is evidenced in his sampling of the documentary El Trabajo y la Tierra, documenting the impact of agrarian reform between 1969 and 1980, a period that meant the expropriation of 10.5 million hectares, equivalent to 56% of agricultural land in Peru, according to a report by the Peruvian Institute of Studies. During this period, estates were converted into approximately 1,200 associative and corporate companies. Okay, give me, this is the conclusion. I'm gonna go here, okay? Just to conclude. Fast, okay. The conclusion of this essay leads us to reflect on the role of Andean futurism reconfigurating Western temporal ontologies and constructing a community of artists that ensures theory does not remain merely theoretical, but becomes a real practice with real impact. It brings theory into practice and vice versa. With the introduction of the concept of hammock, it is possible to find an alternative that leads to the animation of the objects, not in the past, but in the future. Practices capable of providing hammock to an object warrant deeper investigation. However, the idea of the existence of hammock complicates the formalistic approach developed in the linear progressive time. Andean futurism, therefore, does not approach the object solely based on its material and formal characteristics, but also considers the meaning of an artistic object assumed as an animated object in relation to this landscape, but especially in its communal use, helping generate other forms of knowledge. The multitemporality of the object invites us to establish a dialogue with cooperative practices. Likewise, it offers the possibility of creating artistic objects that allow us to build a future that responds to the needs of the community itself. Andean futurism does not embrace nostalgia or idealize the past, but dives into Andean artistic tradition to understand and criticize it from within. We recognize that in the past, much of this animation was used as a tool for manipulating by pre-Columbian governments. Therefore, we revalue expression of rebellion against this hierarchical authority. This animation of the objects could give us the chance to rise to a living object that avoids commodification. We envision an object that, like some objects created within Andean communities, lacks commercial value, mainly because it is not linked to commodities, but to a landscape, as animated as the mountains of Machu Picchu photographed by Chambi. Thank you very much.